guys, welcome to the first actual episode of Road to V10. In this episode, I go over some of my training that I do, some moonboarding, and some regular gym climbing. So here I am starting with my warm-up, doing some stretches, trying to get blood flowing and just get recruited. I think that warming up is something that climbers typically really undervalue, not only when it comes to injury prevention and maximizing performance, but also enabling every single one of your sessions to have a really high level of consistency. So my strength training today was hammer curls, so I'm really trying to go and focus on isolating and building strength in that top end contraction, like lock-offs, one-arm pull-ups, underclings, and just overall trying to get really strong in my arms for hard climbing. This week I'm doing 4 sets of 6, with my warm-up set being 30 pounds and my 3 working sets being 40 pounds. And now, even though we're only a minute in, my warm-up and that strength training probably in itself took an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours to go and get through, because resting is really important for strength training. You want to make sure that you're getting at least 3 to 5 minutes rest on most strength exercises. I think one of the biggest issues that I see most climbers falling into is not front loading their training sessions, not only in the day but also in the week. If you're really wanting to build that top end strength, you're doing those high muscle recruitment, max strength exercises, high weight, low reps. You really need to make sure that you're recovered and rested before you do it. Typically for me, when I'm doing max pulling or finger work where I'm really trying to focus on building max strength, I'll typically go and take a rest day beforehand, and I'll make sure that it's the first thing that I do after getting fully warm. And you also really don't want to overdo it, especially if you're new to training. You really don't want to go and give yourself too much workload where your body can't recover. You get overuse injuries, you're not able to go and produce your maximum force, and you're not going to be able to go and hit that maximum threshold where you're building strength and recovering properly for your next training session.
Well, that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
In the background here, I've just been working through the moonboard climbs. I haven't been on the moonboard in a while, so they've added a couple benchmarks, and up until this point I've been able to go and flash a lot of the newer stuff. And here now getting into the V5s, which for me, I don't know why, but I'm trying to just go through basically in order from the most repeats to least repeats for every single grade. So trying to do like the V5s before the V6s and the 6s before the 7s. It's definitely not the most efficient way to go and just get ticks off, but I'm feeling pretty confident in a lot of the V5s that I've been working on, and I think I definitely have an issue on the moonboard sometimes when it comes to sticking to a project. I typically will throw something on, oh, I can't do it in a couple attempts, well, I'm gonna find one that I can. And I think that is a bad mindset to have, especially for somebody like me who wants to go and really focus on getting better at projecting really hard things. Since I want to go and climb a V10 outdoors, I need to make sure that my projecting skills are good and I've got good tactics and a good headspace for projecting. So here I am, I'm starting to go and get thrown off by some of these climbs. And also, you really got to keep in mind, a lot of these problems I've tried a lot before. So kind of just goes to show you training does work, because unfortunately I don't think my technique has improved a whole lot in the last couple months. Sometimes it almost feels like it's gotten a little bit worse with how much training and how relatively little climbing I have when it comes to just volume. I feel like I've gotten better at projecting hard things, but when it just comes to sending a boulder in a couple attempts, I am notoriously bad at that. But now coming back after a few months of training where I feel a lot stronger, I'm able to go and send a lot of boulders that had been giving me a lot of trouble before.
That was really hard.
I feel like I say that a lot editing this video. But it's no joke, the moonboard is hard. And I feel like it's still definitely one of my weaknesses, like I said in the last video. Because basically between that video and this one, I honestly don't even know if I've been on the moonboard. So finishing the moonboarding up for that session with a very interesting match, I think. But we sent. So now moving into a lot of the auxiliary exercises that I do, typically targeting smaller muscles, the ones that don't get hit normally as climbing, targeting antagonist muscles, and typically focusing more on hypertrophy, which is why I'll allow myself to go and do this at the end of the session, because I know that it's not going to impact my recovery a whole lot. The smaller muscles that aren't getting taxed on such a high load, and it's not a very high volume either, so I know that they'll be able to go and properly recover. I do a pretty decent number of exercises, so I'll typically go and circuit multiple of them together that don't target the same muscles. So moving into the second session of the week, here we are doing edge pulls on the 20mm edge, and we're doing a working weight of 125 pounds and doing 5-second lifts, and that's doing 6 sets each hand, resting 5 minutes in between each set, but not in between each hand. And then here we are moving into, this is working the new set that they just put on the prow. This ended up getting a V6 on it. Pretty cool. All the edges are pretty good, and even though the start hold is pretty slopey, you got the huge volume. You got a sick cut loose move right there, jumping to a pretty good screw on that hold. And surprisingly, the top ended up actually being fairly difficult. You wouldn't expect it to be that hard, especially with how big and nice looking that pinch is, but the next holds you're going to are pretty slopey and you don't have the best feet. And then luckily the finish hold is pretty good. There's a screw on, so basically it's just a jug.
That forward. Hopefully that doesn't like fall.
Now, working another problem right next to it on the same set, this purple crimp line, and it almost isn't really a crimp line. There's crimps on it, but the way that I climbed it, I'm basically moving between like the tiny jugs on it, and I think this also ended up getting a 6 on it. And even though I slipped off it probably about 5 times before sending it because I was sweating buckets for some reason, but once I finally sent it, I can't lie, it was pretty cool movement and it was a pretty good set. By this point in the session, I did a bit of volume on some easier climbs, and I didn't really have much left in the tank, but I wanted to go and give this V9 a couple burns before I called it. I didn't have very high hopes, but I just want to go and try some of the moves because it's a really fun problem. You do get a couple jugs that you can move between, which is pretty generous, but you do end up having to use a lot of body tension on this, and the first couple moves that I'm pulling here are definitely really fingery. And you can just tell I'm just cooked. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'd love to go and hear any feedback that you guys have or anything that you guys would want to see in another video. Thank you.